Hi everybody, I want to start off by saying that I posted this story a while ago, but it was on a different account. One I've since deleted, and a lot has happened with this person since the first time I told the story on here. I tried to find the post but couldn't, so I'm posting it again because I'm currently scared and angry over this situation. Anyways, let's get started. When I was a freshman in college in October of 2018, a guy that I'll call Ron Jones stalked me. I met Ron through one of our mutual friends, Chris, because they were in a school club together. When I met Ron, I thought he was kind of strange, but he was nice and seemed interesting. He claimed to be Slavic and had an accent to back that up. I just thought that he might seem weird because of cultural differences. I go to school in a rural southern area, and I figured the culture shock between here and wherever he was originally from was a lot to handle. Anyways, we exchanged numbers and texted infrequently for a couple of weeks. On October 3rd, 2018, a friend of mine and I went to a drag show on our campus. We weren't out super late, but it was dark when the show ended and we began walking back to our dorm. I'd been texting Ron a bit during the night because he was unable to get a ticket to the drag show, and he wanted to know how it was. At some point in the conversation, I mentioned that I wanted to grab some orange juice on the way back to my dorm. I don't know why I mentioned that to him. I think I was just making conversation. My friend and I stopped in the convenience store near our building so I could get said orange juice. And Ron was already there. He said something about buying the juice for me, and I thanked him but declined. He got kind of mad and started to walk away, but that was odd for me. I let it go. My friend and I walked out of the store and saw that he was standing outside. Our dorm was actually right across from the building the convenience store was in, so he saw us enter the building. My friends and I parted ways, and I walked up to my room, which was on the second floor of the building, facing the convenience store. I kicked myself for doing this now, but I went to my window, opened it, and yelled down to Ron when I saw that he was still standing there. I apologized for declining his offer to buy the juice for me because I felt like I had been rude. Guilty conscience, I guess. He stood below my window, started talking to me about random stuff, and at one point he said something that was odd. He was like, "Can I flirt with you? I enjoy doing this." And I just laughed and said, okay, because I had no clue how to respond to that, and I just figured he was a flirtatious person. But that's not the dumbest thing I did. I ended up going outside to sit and talk to Ron for a little bit because I felt bad for being rude earlier, as if declining someone's offer to buy you something is rude. While we were outside, he didn't say anything of note, and he was acting pretty normal. It got cold out, so he asked if we could go inside to talk, and I said sure. At this point in the year, I'd had several guy friends over to my room just to do work and chat, so I didn't see an issue with it. Things started out normally, but they quickly got scary. Out of nowhere, Ron basically turned into a different person when we were alone in my room. He stopped blinking, held eye contact super intensely, and he was laughing in this really low, creepy way. On top of that, his Slavic accent seemed to disappear. That's when he told me that he lied about being Slavic and that he's native to the state our college is in. He got increasingly more creepy, and there was nothing I could do about it because I had a single room my freshman year. At one point, he grabbed me in a hug and wouldn't let go of me until I said let go of me right now. At least 3 times. He told me he'd done a lot of bad things and that if I wanted to put him in jail, he could give me the names of people who have evidence against him. He also started spewing racist BS about people and said a bunch of horrible things and just a lot of weird nearly sexual stuff to me as well. Like he went on and on about how showering alone isn't fun and that it's better with another person, that he'd be willing to do that if I wanted to. Keep in mind, this guy had a girlfriend and he acknowledged that. He even said he'd go after me if he weren't dating someone, which freaked me out. He asked if he could sleep in my room and I said no, and I used that to tell him that I was ready for bed and that he needed to leave. As he left, he said, "Do you want to know how unsecure the locks on your door really are?" He also pulled a few IDs out of his wallet, all with different names. I closed the door on him and looked at the people. He stood there looking at the door for an uncomfortably long time before leaving. After that, he called me multiple times throughout the month. Always at weird times. He started appearing everywhere I was around campus. The friend who had introduced us, Chris, actually started walking everywhere with me because he noticed Ron following me around and lurking around corners when I couldn't see him. Apparently, he was around me a lot more than I realized because Chris began carrying a knife whenever we went places. Ron was everywhere and he would come up to me and put his arm over me and whisper stuff like, "We need to talk." Whenever he saw me for a while, he would lurk outside my room, but that stopped all of a sudden one day. I later found out that Chris had told my RA about Ron and that he had been banned from my building. I hadn't done that myself because I thought I was overreacting, but I wasn't. I blocked him on my phone and he hasn't contacted me since. He did apologize to me one day on campus last semester when we ran into each other, and I was actually willing to accept it and move on, until recently. So here I am 2 years later, and everything that happened with Ron has come back up again. I recently found out that he has a history of stalking women, like an extensive history going back at least 5 years. I met another victim of his who he stalked before coming to my university. She had gone to the community college for a bit, and he stalked her while he was also a student there. He followed her to our university after being suspended from the school after 3 separate stalking incidents were linked to him. The victim I met told me something very worrying. Ron is currently an RA on our campus, and she was one of his residents. When she told the residential office that Ron had stalked her in the past, they told her all they could do was have her move dorms, which she did. They then said they couldn't do anything to discipline him because the stalking didn't occur at our university. She and I both reported our experiences with him to the residential office, who then tipped off the campus police, who then spoke to the dean of students. The thing is, though, when I gave his name to the residential office, they had no idea who I was talking about. He'd given me a fake first and last name, and I had to do a lot of searching to find out his real name. I knew he was sketchy when I saw the 4 separate IDs in his wallet, but I didn't ever think he'd given me a fake name when I met him. After talking to Residential Living, I talked to the police. When I talked to the police, they didn't seem to care about what I had to say. Actually, the officer I spoke to talked over me while I was explaining the times he followed me and said that he'd heard all I needed to hear. I spoke to the dean of students, who asked me some clarifying questions about the police report he'd received. The police had mixed up several details of my story with the stories of other victims. Apparently, more people than just myself and the girl I met have come forward with information about this person. There are even reports that he got physical with 2 separate people before coming to this university. Last week I saw him on campus. He's still an RA, even though multiple women have spoken to higher-ups about his behavior. If I hear from him, I'll be issuing a no-contact order to ensure that he stays away from me. Right now, though, that feels like too much of a hassle because we are all going home for a 2-month break due to COVID education anyway. That's kind of it. It's anticlimactic and there's no sense of justice in all of this, but hopefully this story teaches you all to stay on your toes and not to think you're overreacting when somebody is being sketchy. Stay safe out there, guys. Alright, this happened a few weeks ago. I am married, but my husband is often out of town, so I'm usually home alone. My front door opens to my living room, which has big windows but thick curtains, so no outsider could possibly peep in. My front door also, however, has a small window near the top of it. I don't really worry about that little window because somebody would have to be at least 7 to 8 feet tall to peer through it. However, it would provide a direct line of sight to my bedroom, which I often use to change in with the bedroom door open because who the heck could see me? There's also a motion sensor light on my porch that also goes off pretty easily, like even when cars drive by or whatever. A few weeks ago, I was alone at night and the light kept going off, but I ignored it. I figured it was the neighbor's cat again. When I got up to leave the next morning, though, my front doorway was blocked by one of the heavy metal chairs that we have on our front porch. I moved it back. This happened 3 times while my husband was gone, and it started freaking me out a little bit. I was perplexed but not really worried until I thought about it later. Wind certainly didn't somehow move it. Then it hit me. The chair was moved right under the door window. I then put several heavy flower pots on the chairs just in case they were magically scooting themselves over during the night from winds or whatever. Very unlikely since they aren't that light and they haven't been blown over or anything, and only one moved. The next morning it was blocking the door again, and the heavy ceramic flower pot was placed neatly on the patio table. My husband thinks I'm crazy. I'm not even sure this would even be considered weighty enough to report. However, I changed with my bedroom door closed now and have dusted off the old shotgun. He's gone again for the week, so here I am again, home alone. Just hoping that I'm not the target of someone whom I'd rather not meet. This took place about 15 years ago. I had been single for a very long time. My kids kept telling me to get back into the swing of things, but I just kept making excuses. My nephew told me about this dating site. He said that there was no harm in talking to people, so I did it. I put everything out there so there were no surprises when or if they met me. I thought that if they still contacted me after reading all I had described myself as and we matched, then maybe I would have coffee with them. Well, I matched with a few and the conversation went well. I met with one gentleman who was way too regimental for my crazy life and kindly declined any more involvement with him. Another guy seemed too pushy and acted like I should be honored to be in his presence, but then came Richard. Now please keep in mind I had very low self-esteem at the time. That being said, Richard seemed great. We carried on conversations for hours. He lived an hour and a half away, so all we could really do was talk to each other. We talked about our kids, dreams, and goals. My daughter even friended one of his sons on Facebook. I was a secretary for some self-help meetings in my town, and he was going to school to be a counselor. Perfect, right? We talked for at least 4 months, but after a while, I noticed that he kept having small problems come up. Arguments with his mom, with who he was living, no money for gas, his truck broke down, and his oldest boy was mad at him. Just little things, you know. Not anything that would set me off, but it was his poor me to heck with the attitude. I tried to let that go and really be a positive influence in his life. His mom and boys loved me and told me that they had never seen him so happy. Time went on and we were still talking every day. I had an opportunity to come see him, and of course, my daughter went with me so she could meet his son in person as well. I took him and his son out to eat at the only little coffee shop in that town. He knew I was on a fixed income, but I paid anyways because he was going to school and didn't have an income as of yet. We had a good time. We met at his son's house in a hilltop town. We were having such a good time that we didn't notice that the snow was coming down hard and the roads were icing up, so my daughter and I stayed the night in one of the rooms. It seemed like the closer we got to his family, the more distant they became to him. It was odd. The next day the roads were clear, so we said our goodbyes and went home. But before we left, I received one extra hug from his son's mother-in-law. She whispered in my ear, "Don't fall for him." I thought that maybe there was something she didn't like about me that came out of the left field. The next few days we didn't talk. I thought that was odd. Did I do something wrong? Somebody from the self-help meeting told me that there was a man looking for me. She said he looked disheveled and smelled like alcohol. This wasn't a surprise to me because I had helped quite a few people get back on their feet, and maybe this one fell off the wagon and just needed to talk. As I was driving down my street, I saw a truck in my driveway I didn't recognize at first. It was him. He found out where I lived and was sitting in front of my house. At first, I was happy until I looked in his truck and saw him slumped over, reeking of booze. At that point, my fixed mode set in, and I asked him in for some strong coffee. He told me that he had a blow-up with his mom and she kicked him out, and his boys won't talk to him. I got him some clean clothes and told him to take a shower. I figured we could sort it out the next day. In the meantime, I was taking him to a meeting. He sobered up and agreed to go, but the whole time at the meeting, my friends were acting like I had lost my mind. Did they see something I was blind to? We went back to my house and he seemed okay. Almost too okay, like nothing at all had happened. My son pulled me aside and told me he didn't like him much, but I thought that maybe he was just being overprotective. I should have paid more attention. We went to the store because I wasn't prepared for the extra mouth, and I bought 4 2-liter bottles of soda, a gallon of milk, 2 monsters for both him and my son, some chips, and other things for dinner. After we ate, we all watched some TV and headed off to bed. I let him sleep on the spare bed in my room, but in the middle of the night, he tried to get frisky. At that point, no. My grown kids were in the other room and something just didn't sit well with me, like he wasn't the same man as he was before. The next morning, my daughter came running out of the bathroom angry. She said in a loud voice, "Somebody peed all over the toilet." He didn't say a word. Later, we were all eating breakfast and he started to let food drop out of his mouth onto the table and floor and was spitting food out while he was talking. He took like 3 2-liter bottles and drank them back to back, letting some run down his chin. Like what? Then yes, there is more. He took the remote and started to set future recordings for his favorite shows and delete a few of my grandchildren's. He set recordings for weeks in advance. Wait, what are you doing, my friend? That's not cool, I told him. But he acted like I said nothing. Then he went to the refrigerator and told me that I had to go to the store and buy more soda and stuff because it was all gone. Like it was gone. He even drank my son's monster and the whole gallon of milk. One day, mind you. Only one. At this point, my daughter was also livid. So she contacted his son and he proceeded to tell her that Richard's mother kicked him out because he wouldn't get a job and was stealing money and eating all of their food, and I could believe that. His other son won't talk to him because he keeps asking for money and won't pay it back. He himself was mad at him for lying to me by telling me that he was going to school when he wasn't and using me as his next big meal ticket. And that was it. I got all of his stuff together and took it to his truck and asked him to leave. It doesn't end there. He had loosened some bolts on his transmission, making it impossible to move. He begged and pleaded with me for me to let him stay. He was at the point snot was coming out of his nose. Good job. He said that he just wanted to be close to me, and if that meant sleeping in his truck, he would do that, and that he wanted to be with me. Well, no. I called his oldest son and told him that if they didn't come with a tow truck and get their dad, his fate wasn't going to be nice. They arrived about 2 hours later, apologizing for their father's actions. We found out through his son that for many years, he had gone through quite a few unhealthy relationships and took advantage of a lot of women that fell for his lies. He still tries to friend me on Facebook to this day. In June of last year, I moved to a borough of South London in order to pursue a master's degree in the city. I moved to this specific borough because my boyfriend works there, so it was convenient for him. Plus, it's cheaper than living in the very center. The area isn't great. Not the worst, but definitely not great. It's the type of neighborhood where you walk past a bar at 9:30 a.m. on the way to class and people are already drunk, and then when you come back home at 5 o'clock, they are still there. Also the type of place where junkies hang around with their Staffordshires and catcall you through rotting teeth. Of course, there are some genuinely nice normal people in the neighborhood, but where I live, which is directly on the high street, you run into some odd characters. My first encounter with this creep happened when I was walking back from school. It was summer and I was wearing a kimono cover-up. This is relevant. I'm 23 years old, 22 at the time this first started, and blonde with an hourglass shape, so I'm fairly used to getting attention from random men on the street. Normally, people just make a comment or a noise and then go about their day. I don't usually ever respond, and the situation, albeit somewhat annoying, regulates itself. Not this time. I'm listening to music, and suddenly, I see a guy walking in step with me. This man is probably about 5'10", slim, with a cropped afro. He wears big 80s reading glasses, is in his 20s, and also wearing both a camouflage shirt and pants as a matching set. He makes a motion for me to take out my headphones. Our conversation went something like this. Him. Oh hey, I like your robe. What do you call that? A kimono. I say politely but somewhat dismissively. So where'd you get it? He asked me, walking in step with me still. Don't remember, I say, trying to blow him off and getting confused about why we were discussing fashion together. Oh, okay, he said. Yeah, you're a classy girl, so can I get your number? And do you like clubbing? Sorry, I have a boyfriend. He ignores my statement completely, still walking in step with me. He continues. I have a cousin. He owns this club. We could go together sometime if you want. No, sorry, I have a boyfriend. Oh, I bet you're just saying that to get rid of me. I force a smile and continue walking. At this point, he has stopped following me, which is good because I didn't want him to follow me home. I glance back to make sure he's not following me, and I notice he's now cornered some other girl. Wow, what a creep. I move on with my day. About a week later, I'm walking towards the grocery store when I see a shadow in my periphery. I turn and it's him. He motions for me to take out my headphones again, and I do. I'm confused as I've already told him I have a boyfriend, but I figured he may have forgotten me. I like your sunglasses. What brand are they? I laugh internally, thinking that this must be a smooth opening line, as this was the second time he complimented something I was wearing. Thanks. So, do you like clubbing? I met you last week. I still have a boyfriend. We met last week. He asked incredulously. Yes, right outside Nando's. I don't think so. I would have remembered a fine girl like you. Right. Sorry, I have to go. Where are you from? He asks this because he notices my North American accent, which is very uncommon to hear around these parts, and I tell him I'm Canadian. I figured that he would remember me now, as to my knowledge, I'm the only North American in the area. I like Canadian girls, he said. Extreme cringe, by the way. Okay, I have to go. At this, he stops following me and walks the other way. Maybe 2 weeks go by, and at this point, I told my boyfriend about the guy. He gets mildly annoyed, but figures the guy would have given up after being rejected twice in the span of a week. One night, we were coming home from central London, walking from the train station back home. In front of us, I noticed that guy wearing the same army outfit combo. I indicated that was the man who was bothering me, so my boyfriend would know what he looked like. Funnily enough, he's following another girl and giving her the "my cousin owns a nightclub" spiel. I roll my eyes, and my boyfriend and I share a giggle to indicate how pathetic this all is. The girl completely ignores him and looks at her phone, and eventually he loses interest and walks away. A couple more weeks go by. I'm going to the post office to mail a package. I feel a hand on my shoulder. It's him. "Slow down," he says, laughing. This time, he's wearing a blue bomber jacket with some sort of phoenix embroidered on it. At this point, I'm incredibly annoyed because he's approaching me again and also because he touched me. "We have met before." "I have a boyfriend," I said, clutching my package. "Nah, I would have remembered you." Now, I'm not sure whether this guy was joking or whether he really had that bad of a memory. I don't claim to be so pivotal of a figure so that any stranger would remember me, but surely after speaking with the guy twice, he would have some recollection. "So, do you like clubbing?" "Let me guess. You have a cousin who owns a nightclub?" "Yeah, how do you know?" "Because we've spoken before. Look, I have a boyfriend and I don't want you to follow me again. When you see me, do not approach me because I will always say no." He doesn't say anything to this, and I look him deep in the eye so that he will remember my face. At this point, he's walked in step with me to the post office, so I turn to go inside, and as I do, he grabs my hand. I turn to face him, and he's giving me this predatory, over-the-top, lecherous stare. "Do you have any single friends for me, then?" I'm really unsettled by his energy, and more so that the guy could be so obtuse, as if I would put any of my friends in that situation. "No," I muster and head inside. He lingers at the doorway for the post office, but eventually walks away. I tell my boyfriend about this, and at this point, he's really angry. He offers to talk to the guy as he says he often sees him on the way to work. According to him, every time he sees him, he's harassing some other girl. I figure this guy has way too much time on his hands, and I wonder if he does anything else besides hitting on random women in his spare time. In the following months, I'm approached by him a few more times. Each time he gives me the spiel about his cousin owning the club, and each time he claims he does not remember me, and even comments on my accent asking where I'm from. At this point I don't respond, but he still talks and walks in step with me until he realizes that I'm not going to speak, and then he walks away. Sometimes, I kid you not, he walks across the street and blocks another girl on her path, directly after striking out with me. I figured this guy is either high on drugs or mentally ill, but probably a combination of both. I'm not sure if his inability to remember me is some tactic or if he really has no clue that we have spoken many times. I decided to get the police involved as it got to the point where I would have stress about walking on the street for fear of running into him. No, he was not violent, but his energy and mannerisms indicated that he was unstable, and yes, he had touched me a few times, usually to block my path, which is unacceptable. The police come and take a statement, and although they are sympathetic, they say there's not much they can do unless I have this guy's name, a photo or phone number so they can identify him. The officer even tells me to pretend to be interested in order to get his number so that I can forward it to the police station. And to say the least, I was very uncomfortable with that idea and decided to not do it. The same day, I am walking home from the grocery store with heavy bags and turn onto my street. I am on a slight downward slope and I hear, "Hey," coming from the top of the street. I turn and it's him. "No," I shouted, as I was very near to my house and did want him to know where I live. "Don't come near me, I'm not interested." "No, I can't come and talk to you," he shouts back. "No, stay away." He lingers at the top of the slope for a while and I stay in place, as to continue walking would reveal where I live. Eventually, he sees another girl and follows her until he's out of sight. Similar occurrences happen on and off for the next few months. Sometimes I ignore him and sometimes I verbally communicate that I'm not interested. Every time he claims not to remember me. Then I decided to call the police again after another, more disturbing incident. I was walking towards the gym and as I was turning a corner, I almost bumped into that guy. At first, I didn't really clue in that it was him, but then I looked and realized who it was. I guess he took me looking at him as a sign that I was checking him out. I walked faster and turned around to see if he was following me. He wasn't. Oh, good, I thought, figuring that he had better things to do this morning than bother me. I walk for a good 10 minutes, looking back every now and then. When I'm confident that he's gone, I relax and walk at my leisure. Then I hear fast footsteps from behind. I turn around and this guy is running towards me. He either followed me discreetly for a few blocks or he guessed my path and ran to catch up to me. "Hey, are you going to the gym?" he shouts, looking at my gym clothes. "You don't need to work on that body. It looks gorgeous to me," he said. At this point, I'm sprinting, trying to get away. "Hey, I gave you a compliment. Don't be rude." This guy's faster than me and he catches up and puts his arm out to block me. I'm so mad at this point. I look him in the eyes and say, "If you bother me again, I will call the police." "The police? I don't even know you." "When have I bothered you?" I can't reason with a lunatic, so I tell him, "Remember my face this time. leave me alone. He doesn't follow me to the gym. I call the police and they tell me there's not much they can do as he hasn't assaulted me. Right, because it has to get to that point before it's valid, huh? But they acknowledge that his behavior is unacceptable. I figured that I would try to get an identifying photo next time I see him. Weeks go by and there's no encounter. I feel good, like maybe he finally got the message. On a cold March day, I walk to the main station, which is about 15 minutes away from my house. Shit. He's lingering on the stairs that lead up to it. He has these wild eyes that seem to be searching for girls. Any girl. He spots me and springs into action. Nice day, isn't it? He asks in a way that seems very rehearsed. Also, it wasn't a nice day, it was cold and gray. I don't answer. Nice day, isn't it? He repeats louder. I get my Oyster card out and walk quickly towards the turnstiles. I assume he doesn't have a ticket, so I could be safe as soon as I cross them. Nice day. I cut him off. I'm shaking him so upset. I've met you a million times. I've told you I'm not interested. What is wrong with you? Without a beat, he says. That's rude, isn't it? I've never spoken to you in my life. Right. I'm the crazy and unreasonable one. Call the police and tell them what happened, as I figure that the station would have surveillance cameras and that would have captured him harassing me in the act. This could give them the fodder they need to at least give him a warning. After a few days, they call me back and tell me that the station doesn't have any outside cameras filming the entrance. I felt hopeless there. Of course, my boyfriend is aware of all of this and he gets increasingly angry with every encounter. Every morning, my boyfriend gets an energy drink from the same corner store before work. This time, as he is paying, he notices that guy wearing the same army combo getup enter the store. He puts a couple of pounds on the counter to pay and turns around to face the creep. I need to talk to you, he says angrily. The creep gets visibly agitated and shifty and says, No, I don't want to talk to you, and runs out of the store. The shop owner informs my boyfriend that this guy comes in all the time and steals merchandise. He also tries to pay for things by eating a chocolate bar at the till and saying, I'll pay you later. He has been kicked out of the store many times, but the shop owner never involved the police, as apparently the process for incriminating petty criminals is so complicated and he would have to close his business temporarily. I was banking on the fact that he would have a record, but without a name, it was hard to find out. My most recent encounter with him happened about a month ago. I was walking home from the station and noticed the guy walking in step with me. This time, I decided not to freak out. I wanted to play along with him, without indicating too much interest so I could get a name and photo. He starts by saying, I'm in a band with my cousin and we're looking for members. You want to join? Right. That's totally believable. As he is speaking, I subtly hold my phone up and take a good picture of his face. No thanks, I don't really have any musical talent, I tell him. Do you like clubbing? He asks. I ignore him and ask, So, what's your name? I'm Marlon. What's yours, gorgeous? I gave him a fake name and make a mental note of his name, which I remember because it's the same name as Marlon Brando. So now I have a photo and a name. The police are reviewing everything, but I feel like even with this, they're not going to be able to do much given their track record. Although he hasn't bothered me since this day, I still don't want it to happen again. I'm definitely going to move out at some point, but for the time being, how do I deal with this? How can I ensure that he remembers me and stays away? Am I doing something wrong, or am I not doing enough? Does he actually not remember me, or is this some tactic? Thanks for reading this long, and it's been therapeutic to share it with others. Any advice would be welcome. For some context, I was 18 when this happened to me, but I absolutely did not look my age. I am a very petite female, really short and skinny and with a baby face, so I actually look about 14 to 15. I am also not conventionally attractive, given that I can pass as a very lanky boy if I'm not wearing makeup, or if I wear male clothes, which I do often because they are comfortable and have pockets. I also have to note that I live in Mexico, and this happened around the time where there was a wave of female kidnappings around my city. It started when my mom and my aunt decided to go get some lunch one day after school. I hadn't had classes that day, so I was going to meet them at the restaurant when they arrived. This restaurant was on a very busy street called Chapultepec, where there are always people dancing, having concerts, and selling things. So, always being buzzing with hundreds of people, it is hard to stand out, but also everybody minds their own business, and it isn't common that people approach you really. I was walking there alone as I was going to meet my mom and my aunt, but suddenly, I felt somebody grab me by the wrist and pull me over. When I looked, there was this man, probably around his 30s, smiling at me in a really charming manner. He wasn't the typical creepy guy. He was very tall and had blue eyes, a nice smile. Nothing about his appearance really gave off any red flags, but still, something about the situation seemed off somehow. "Hi, you are a very beautiful girl. What's your name? Want to go grab some coffee?" Mind you, I look 14 and I'm wearing boy clothes. Also sweaty from walking a long distance in the sun. I was not a beautiful girl. I, being paranoid as I am, didn't want anything to do with this guy and apologized after politely declining and tried to get away, but his grip on me tightened. Don't be like that. I really like you and want to take you out." I declined once again and tried to free myself from him, but he only tightened his hand even more, making me worried. That's when I noticed two other men sitting on a bench right behind him. They, unlike the dude talking to me, were incredibly creepy. They were also huge and were staring at us while trying to pretend they were on their phones, and this is when an alarm started going off in my head. "I just want to get coffee with you. You are really beautiful. Besides, you are all alone, right? There's no one waiting for you, right?" By this point, my heart sank as I realized what was going on. This creep even lowered his voice at the last two sentences so only I could hear him, and I saw how the other two men suddenly stood up at that and started walking toward us. In a complete panic, and thanks to my wrist being so thin, I actually managed to pull away from his grasp, and once I did, I ran like a madman. I ran for at least 5 blocks non-stop, and thankfully they didn't follow me. I went to have lunch with my mom and aunt, and the rest of the day went about smoothly until next week. There was an Amber Alert for a 13-year-old girl who went missing on that street the same day after my incident happened and was believed to have been kidnapped. This happened about 3 years ago in college. I worked at a GameStop near my school that was situated inside of a mall. Working as a young female in a GameStop is almost as you might expect. Talked down to and flirted with, but since all my managers were grown men that were super cool and amazing, I didn't worry much at all as they shut down any issues or took problem cases. This one guy was a bit different of a case. It was sometime in the fall near the end of my shift with my manager. At 8:30 p.m., a guy walks in and starts looking around. I don't mind him, and since we close at 9 p.m., I was organizing the shelves and displays while my manager was behind the counter. It was about 5 minutes when I caught sight of the guy behind me just staring at me. I assumed I was in the way and moved to another side of the store to clean. It was a decent sized store, and I moved from the Xbox station to the PS4 station. There he was behind me again, not saying anything or doing anything, just there looking at me but not trying to look like he was looking at me. I mutter an "excuse me" and move again. The PS4 was in the back of the store, so I moved up front with the collectibles. It was 8:45 and he was behind me again. By this point, even my manager noticed, but due to our store being under constant stress from our district manager, we didn't want to start an issue. I kept cleaning and ignoring this guy lingering around me. 9 p.m. hits, and I think finally this guy will leave. Yeah, no, not really. When closing rolls around, we can't right away tell shoppers to leave because it's bad service, so my manager politely asks if the guy needs anything or is ready to be checked out, because we are closing very soon. The guy mutters something and leaves without making a purchase. Thinking it's the end of it, we close and lock the doors and have a good chuckle about the weirdo. I start to vacuum and the manager counts the registers. As I am vacuuming, I notice movement outside the glass storefront and the guy is there looking at me. When he sees that I see him, he walks away. For about 10 minutes, the guy paces the front of the store. Now, I'm officially freaked out, and my manager, a soft giant bear of a man, is pissed. He tells me to go in the back. Don't have to tell me twice. I stay by the door to hear and watch the interaction on the security feed. "Can I help you, sir?" "We're closed." My manager says it with the most intimidating voice I've heard from him in my life. "I want to talk to the girl," he said. This guy's voice was even more intimidating despite being smaller than my manager. I was afraid for my manager for a second. "She doesn't want to talk to you, dude. You have to leave or I will call security." They bicker for a while longer about him wanting to talk with me before he leaves. After work, my manager walked me to the train station and made me keep contact with him until I was on the train. Apparently, the guy came back a couple of times during my off days and asked about me, and my manager told him off until he never came back. I don't know if he was banned or what. Definitely one of my weirder work situations. This is a very strange story and it's pretty long, so bear with me. Alright, I don't even really know where to start. My house, which I rent, has a ground floor and 2 more floors, so 3 in total. I was getting ready to go out when I went to the first floor in my room to get my makeup and went to the second floor in my flatmate's room to do my makeup there. I go back to my room around 45 minutes later and I see 3 of my purses on the floor, and the shoulder handle, not sure if this is a word, has been cut on 2 of them and a bit on the 3rd one. Both purses are cut the same way in 2 spots. I start getting a bit freaked out because nobody is in the house except me and my flatmate, and we have been together upstairs the whole time. In the living room, which is on the ground floor, we left the back window door open to air out the room, as we had some people over the night before. The door in the living room leads to a tiny garden that is protected by a tall fence, which is more protected by a wired fence, and I doubt anybody would just climb on it and come in, cut purses, take no money or cards from them, and then leave. The complex has 8 flats, so all of the tiny gardens are connected in a long line, but we are only connected to one as we are the last flat in the line. So absolutely nothing was stolen or even moved, and we see no marks anywhere, but it's still weird, so we called the police to find an explanation. The police come and check the evidence, a wet spot on the carpet in the room about 5 centimeters long, and how the purses are cut. We thought it was a fox that went into the house, went upstairs, ate the bags, and left, based on the fact that a fox tried to enter the living room one time the same way a few weeks back. The police said it is not an animal cut. It is most likely a knife cut and asked if we had any problems with anyone, like an ex or anything like that. And we don't. Most people don't even know where we live, and especially how to get to one's room as the house is pretty complicated. The stairs in the house are metal and spiraled, and you basically hear it from every spot in the house if somebody is on the stairs. Police call forensics to ask for evidence. They say they do not know what they could do as they can't take fingerprints off the bags because of the texture, and the wet spot is apparently dry by now. Police said that they have never heard of something like this before and that it makes no sense, so it might be a ghost. Who says that though? They marked it off as a burglary and left. I have to mention that the night before we had the music pretty loud and our neighbor texted us very angrily to stop the noise. I mean, he knows the house, but as we have the same structure, he was the only one with easy access. But he's also like 75 years old and all the encounters were really nice so far. So we are left with something, or someone, comes in the house through the back garden that is protected by very high walls and a wired fence, enters the living room, passes by the PS4, TV, and expensive speakers, goes on the hallway, passes by very expensive shoes, goes up the stairs, enters a bedroom, cuts the handles to the purses, does not take absolutely anything, and leaves. I slept in my flatmate's room last night, and today I went into the room to clean it, and I found one of the missing handle pieces in my bed, under the blanket. What is going on here? Nobody has any explanation. Edit. Today, after one day I wrote this, I was putting my shoes on and I picked up something from the shoe chair, and another piece of black crocodile print leather fell out from underneath. This is at the hallway or shoe section on the ground floor. I thought it was another part of the black bag, but I realized it is part of my flatmate's black leather boots, so this person or animal also cut one piece of one boot. It's not her. Those are her favorite shoes. So far, they have cut a black crocodile print purse and a snake print purse, but today we found a black piece of crocodile boot. Same material, different parts of the house. What is going on? Edit 2. We got a bottle of wine for our neighbor to apologize for the noise, and I saw him today by accident. He thanked us for the wine and seemed generally nice and as if he got over it. We did this so we could start talking again and ask him if anything weird like this happened and explain what happened to us. He said exactly this. Nothing happened. Thanks for the heads up. Edit 3. It has now been 1 month since the incident, and my flatmate's brother has noticed her sneakers are cut the same way as her boots. We think it is from the same night as he has not worn them for a long time or has not inspected them. The 3 of us lived together and something was cut from each of us. I live and work in a very small and rural area that also happens to be a college town. It definitely has an everybody knows everyone kind of vibe, and I will often run into the same people out and about around campus or running errands. It's mostly a town of students, professors/university staff, and young families with children. I've always felt very safe here. We have a police force patrolling campus almost constantly, and as a student, I would often explore campus late at night and never once felt unsafe. We have the occasional tourists coming in and out of town, or people coming in from neighboring areas who we call townies. The 4th of July is celebrated heavily here, with a parade, craft fair, and dog show during the day and a fireworks display at night. I have a boyfriend who lives about an hour and a half away from me. He usually comes to visit whenever he is able to get off of work. He was not off of this past 4th, but really wanted to see the fireworks with me that evening, so he decided to make the drive up from work and planned to leave super early the next morning to make it in time for his morning shift. I had gone to the earlier festivities that day with some friends, and it was a beautiful but ridiculously hot day. Although I was dehydrated and sweaty, I was overall having a great time and was happy to see my boyfriend. The fireworks are done at a lake on campus, and community members will often come with their families and bring picnic blankets to spread out on and watch the show. There are also food trucks everywhere. The fireworks start at dark, but my boyfriend and I wanted to get there early to get a good spot, so we started heading that way around 5:30 or 6. The lake is slightly removed from central campus. You have to turn off the main road and go a ways down another road, and then make a turn onto another smaller side road to find it. It is an older campus and not many things are labeled, so it's kind of tricky to find your way around unless you know exactly what you are doing and where you're going. The lake is near the university farm, which is where the food trucks are set up in this big open field. From there is a road you can walk about a quarter mile of down to hit the lake. Some people were setting up in the grassy field by the farm, while others were actually walking down to the lake. My boyfriend and I decided we should go down to the lake since there would likely be a better view there, but first we stopped and got ice cream from one of the food trucks. Across from the food trucks is the road to the lake. We were about to start walking towards the lake, but at the end of the road, there is a small pasture with a few horses, and I told my boyfriend I wanted to look at them before we started our walk. As we were standing by the horses, we hear a man's voice yell out, "Hey, you in the white hat," several times. It takes us a minute to realize what's happening, but my boyfriend and I realize that a man nearby is gesturing for us to talk to him. The man finally approaches us, explains that he's not from the area, but that his friends just dropped him off for the fireworks, and he is wondering where the majority of people will be watching them. I am creeped out by the most unfamiliar men due to several bad experiences I've had, so I was very wary of the situation. I hung back and was pretending to be very interested in the horses while watching this guy out of the corner of my eye. He was a tall man with deeply tanned skin and shorter hair. I don't know any other way to describe him other than to say that he looked dirty though. He was wearing an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, and it looked as though he'd been wearing those clothes for at least several days. He also had a guitar slung over his shoulder. He had a creepy look in his eyes, one I instantly clocked. My boyfriend is very outgoing and friendly, almost too friendly to strangers, and immediately started talking to the man and explaining the setup. I eventually walked over, hoping this would prompt the man to go on his way, and again explained that most of the people would be watching from the lake and that if he kept following the road we were on, he would hit it. I told him it's usually a great show and that I hoped he enjoyed his visit here. I was trying to be nice, but also desperately wanted this man to leave us alone. The man did not take the hint. Instead, continuing to talk to my boyfriend, asking if we are students here and stuff. My boyfriend explained that I used to be, but that I now work at the university, so he often comes to visit me. The man explained that he was from a town about 30 minutes away, and my boyfriend began discussing how he also grew up in the surrounding area. Somehow, my boyfriend mentioned his favorite football team in the conversation, and the man suddenly became animated, saying he had just coincidentally finished writing a song about that exact team. He began reaching for the guitar on his back, and in a panic, both my boyfriend and I were like, "Oh no, that's okay. You don't gotta play it for us." The man kept on insisting, and so I told him we would catch up to him down at the lake and he could play it for us there. I was again hoping that would get the man away from us, but again, he didn't get the bait. He told us that he considered himself to be a rapper and asked if we wanted to hear him freestyle. I think my boyfriend was honestly entertained by this guy and at this point was like, "Yeah, sure, let's hear it." The man then proceeded to rap at us for, I kid you not, 15 minutes straight. My boyfriend and I were looking at each other the whole time trying to hold back laughter. One highlight was when this guy tried to rhyme mad with bad and sad multiple times. I was amused but getting slightly annoyed as it was beginning to get darker out and people were streaming towards the lake, and I still wanted to get a good spot. When the guy finished, my boyfriend and I were like, "Wow, that was so good." Tried to start walking towards the lake, but this guy followed us and blocked our path. He kept trying to talk to my boyfriend asking me if I was his sister. He explained we were dating, and the guy's eyes once again lit up. He pulled my boyfriend close and then began to mumble vague expressions about dating and finding the one to him. At this point, I noticed even my boyfriend was beginning to look uncomfortable. I saw his hands go into his pocket, which is where I know he keeps a pocket knife. The man just kept mumbling and was half mumbling, half rapping. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I honestly couldn't make out half of what this guy was saying as he kept getting quieter as he went and was slurring his words. I remember him specifically mentioning his plans to run for mayor of his town in 2028, how he believed himself to be the Archangel Michael. His name was Michael, and how he had previously tried to give up weed and cigarettes but failed. This whole time he was kind of stumbling around and mumbling while still inching closer and closer to my boyfriend, who kept moving away. My boyfriend positioned himself so he was in between me and this man. At one point, I remember the guy grabbing my boyfriend and saying, "Wow man, your eyes are really blue," and then going on a whole rant about how blue-eyed people are closer to God. He looked at my eyes and deduced that they are hazel. My eyes are also very blue, so not sure where he got this from. This whole interaction lasted maybe another 20 minutes, and the whole time I was trying to be polite and was going along with whatever this man said while simultaneously looking down the street and hoping another one of my friends would show up and save us from the interaction. There were several times that a family would walk by with children, and I almost decided to pretend that I knew one of them to see if they would help us get away from this man, but decided against it since I didn't want to do anything to make this man angry since he seemed a little bit unpredictable. At one point, I even pulled my phone out and secretly recorded part of this guy's mumble rapping. I don't remember how, but this man eventually decided that he had enough of us, I guess, and finally decided to go his way and began to follow the crowd going towards the lake. My boyfriend and I just looked at each other like, what the heck did we just witness, and watched the man walk towards the lake. We wanted him to get a good head start since neither one of us really wanted to sit anywhere near him and be forced to interact with him again. As we watched the guy, we saw him stop and approach another group. We couldn't hear what he was saying to them, but we could tell they all looked confused and annoyed. We were considering going to distract the guy and help him out, but again, we didn't really want to interact with this guy again, and we didn't want him following us around all night acting like we are his friends. We also briefly considered going to get one of the police who were present at the event, but eventually decided against it since this man hadn't done anything outright dangerous yet. My boyfriend told me he knew the guy mentioned smoking weed, but said he also suspected that he might be on something else. My boyfriend is from around the area and is very familiar with the drug problems in the surrounding communities. I also wondered if mental illness could be at play, since some of the statements the man was making do seem like things somebody experiencing mania might say. My boyfriend and I went back the whole rest of the night without running into this man. He gave us his Facebook name, and so I went down a whole rabbit hole after the fact. A lot of his recent posts were making vaguely religious and rambly statements about religion, but scrolling further down, it looked like at one point he may have had a wife and kids. I could also see the transition from him being clean-cut/shaven to him not taking as good care of himself. It was honestly pretty sad. I'm not sure if this man's life was disrupted by drugs or mental illness, but I hope he is able to receive the care he needs. My boyfriend and I had a long discussion about it, and he knows several people from his hometown who have unfortunately faced similar struggles. So this was back right after 9/11 happened. I, female 24 years old, was driving by myself across the country to get to my son, who was with my ex. I had been out of state taking care of a sick family member. It was the middle of the night in New Mexico, and I saw police lights behind me. I was exhausted and annoyed because I hadn't been speeding or anything. There were not really any other cars on the road at the time, and I was close to the exit for the hotel that I had planned to stop at for the night. I pulled over and the cop came over to the driver's side window, which in itself was weird because they usually come to the passenger window on busy roads. And this was a highway, so I gave him all of my stuff and he just stared at me for the longest time. He walked to his car and then returned almost immediately. He told me to step outside the car. Okay, so I was worried at this point because I had gotten tickets before, but being asked to step outside the car was not the norm. I did as he said, and he asked if I had been drinking. I said I hadn't, and then I asked why he pulled me over. He said I was driving erratically, which wasn't true. He then asked me if I was a terrorist, which was absurd. I was just a young American woman driving, so there was really no reason for this question. It was weird, and I was a veteran with an ID also. He gave me a walk the line drunk driving test, which I passed, and then said he needed to search my car to see if I had drugs. Thought about this for a minute because I knew my rights and all, but it was so late and I was so tired. I just didn't want to deal with all the BS of refusing, so I gave him the okay because I knew I didn't have anything there. So when he got to my truck, he opened up a small suitcase that I had that was my dancer or stripper stuff. He asked about it and I told him I was a stripper. This really set him off and he started screaming at me about being a trash person. This made me mad and I started looking around at my situation. I was alone for the most part with this weird guy, and every once in a while a car would pass by, but for the most part the roads were empty. It was the middle of the night and I didn't have anything on me to protect myself, and he had a gun, of course. He told me that I needed to walk back into the tree line that was next to the road. I stared at him and said no. I demanded he call for backup and the other officers to come. He was thrown off by this. I said I wanted a female officer and I would no longer comply with anything he said. And then I started trying to wave down cars when they did pass by. He told me to calm down, wrote out a speeding ticket and let me go. I never paid the ticket and never heard a word about it. This was 20 years ago. At the time, I was really shaken and I just forgot about it, but looking back, I don't think he was a real cop. Female living in Hawaii. The more I think of this, the creepier it gets and the more upset I become. This happened a couple of days after leaving work. It's around 8:30 at night and I'm taking my normal route home. I use this back road that usually doesn't have traffic this time of night. It saves some minutes from using the H1. Now, this road is famous for the high number of fatal car accidents that happen on it every year. I've been traveling this way for the past 2 years and could never figure out why until that night. So the road is a long stretch, about 7 or 8 miles with no stop signs or random sharp turns, and street lights are far between. I'm driving along and I come up behind this car. Not sure of the make, but it was a silver hatchback. It's going maybe 30 miles per hour, 35 tops. And the speed limit on that stretch is about 45, I think. The only reason I know that it's going that slow is because my speedometer never went above 25. On top of that, he kept speeding up a little bit and then going back down to his snail pace. I follow behind him for a little bit, and he's still doing the speed up, slow down thing until I get impatient and decide to pass them. Seeing the dotted lines, I proceed to pass, but they speed up. Okay, maybe it's because we're going slightly downhill. I accelerate more, 45 or so, and so do they. I glance over to the car, making a what the heck face. It's dark out, so I'm not sure if they see me. It's then that I notice a car coming straight ahead. The lights are still a good distance away, so I still have time to get over. I press on the gas harder, bringing up my speed to 55, thinking I'll be able to pass now. Nope, the jerk in the car beside me is still matching my speed. The car lights in front of me are getting closer, and it's at this moment I slightly panic. You're probably thinking, why didn't I just brake and cut behind the car? Well, 1, the car that was behind me is now behind the car that I'm trying to pass, and 2, if I slam on my brakes at my current speed, I'll probably fishtail and take out all the cars anyways. The car in front of me is maybe 10 car lengths away by now, and I can see them swerve to the side of the road, but there's actually really nowhere to go. The only thing I can think to do is press on the gas and try to cut over. I'm hitting 60 miles per hour now, and the damn car is still beside me. They're really not slowing down at all. The oncoming car's headlights are super bright, and I know that I'm just seconds from being in a head-on collision. I hold my breath, slam on the gas, and swerve my car over just in time to see the lights of the car coming speed past me. My heart's pounding in my ears and I'm trying to catch my breath, thinking, oh, I'm still alive. Wow. I look in my side mirror to check on the car that was heading towards me, making sure they didn't fly out into the tall grass or something, and I can see their taillights in the distance. I then glance in my rear view to see that the car that caused all of this has slowed down considerably. Like they have to be going no more than 40 now. I slow down even more, trying to get a better gauge on their speed because there's no way they're going that slow. My speed, 45 miles per hour. Their speed, a hatchback speck in the distance. What? How are you speeding up for 1 second then back to your original slow pace? Maybe this isn't that creepy and maybe it doesn't belong here, but I can't get over how there was almost a 4-car accident because they didn't want to let me pass. I probably didn't handle this situation correctly, but the whole incident happened with 5 to 15 seconds. And I truly just panicked and my thought process was not the best. Not sure how I would have been able to avoid a wreck any other way. So, hatchback douchebag, stay away from me. Side note, writing this out made me see that maybe they had baited me with the whole speed up slow down thing. I don't know. Hi guys, so I've been following this sub for quite some time and have seen some horrific, weird, and messed up stories, and I also have one of my own. This happened just a couple of months ago. So I moved from New Zealand to Germany 3 years ago now. I was working at a hotel in Munich as a bar manager while I have been learning the language. It's ridiculously complicated, especially if English is your first language. Anyways, I'm a 27-year-old blonde, thin, punky looking girl. You get the picture. It was a 2-minute walk from my hotel to the train station, and I had to catch the train to my hometown after I finished work most nights. It was common for me to get harassed at the train station or on the way to the station, even though it was only a 2-minute walk. It was extra horrible because I couldn't speak German very well. I once had a guy ask me to marry him for money, another asking me why I didn't speak his language because he wanted me to come home with him, and another one called me a slut because I ignored him. The list goes on, but the scariest time was actually in my hometown. I live 35 kilometers away from the city. I had home on the train as usual. I got off the train and began walking around the corner to my apartment. This is around midnight on a Monday. I get to my apartment and unlock my door. But as I am unlocking the door, somebody taps my shoulder. I turn around and see a man behind me, quite short, Middle Eastern, a friendly enough looking guy. I was obviously shocked a bit, so my immediate response assumed that he lived in the building, so I asked him if I could help him with something. It was just so weird, so that was the first thing I said. He said in German, "I need your number." Again, I was shocked because I assumed he lived in the building and was locked out of his house or something. I was so naive. He began to tell me that he had followed me home from Munich and needed my number. I said no, that I was married and my husband was literally inside the apartment. He followed with "that doesn't matter" and asked if he could come in. I began to freak out and stated that I was going inside, and I bid him farewell. As I entered my apartment, he pushed me forward and tried to get inside my apartment. I turned around and slammed the door so hard in his face it brought tears to my eyes. Not the slamming, but you know what I mean. The creep continued to stand outside for a few minutes. I could see him through the peephole. By the time I told my husband, he was gone. I didn't even think of calling the police, I was too bewildered. The thing that scares me is that this situation could have been so much worse. I am quite fit and strong, but if somebody were smaller and stuff, it could have been really bad. If my husband wasn't there, his daughter lives here. I kept thinking of all of these things that could have happened, and it still gives me nightmares. If I didn't shut the door in time and if I lived alone. All of these things. Now I carry pepper spray and a whistle everywhere I go. So, to the creepy man who followed me 35 kilometers home and tried to get into my house, let's never meet again, please. Okay, so this might not be as scary as some, but it really creeped me out when I realized what could have happened. So when I was 11 years old, I lived in a house surrounded by a complex for the elderly. My family were the only residents with children. Myself and 3 brothers. I'm a girl, by the way. So in this particular complex, there was a guy that would come and always help out the old people, like taking their bins out and doing shopping, etc. He would always talk about us playing outside. The windows of the complex would face directly to our house, so they could look and see us playing often. Most days, he would just wave and say hi. We always saw him, so we didn't think much of it. One day, he decided to come over and speak to us about what we were doing, what games we liked, and just general stuff. But whenever my mom came out, he would always say his goodbyes and scuttle back into the complex. We would often catch him staring at us through the top windows. That particular day, not long after my mom had gone back inside, he came back. I remember the feeling I got, and I couldn't quite pin it down. I was the eldest out of our group and the only girl. He started asking me about cameras and if I liked photography. I said yes, as I was always taking photos with a disposable camera that my mom gave me. He kept saying he was a photographer for a catalog and he thought I would be great for it. He also mentioned that he had just gotten a load of new bikinis in and asked if I would like to come in and try them on for the catalog. I had never seen this guy with a camera and he was always scruffy. He certainly didn't look like a polished professional. Now, although I was 11, I was pretty streetwise, and I had a bad feeling. He asked me to come over right away, and his place was a short walk away, so if we were to leave now, I would be back before it got dark. He was practically pulling me by the hand to go with him. I started to feel pretty scared at this point and began to make excuses and said I had to ask my mom. I broke free and practically ran back home. When I told my mom what had happened, she disappeared for half an hour and came back looking extremely angry and a bit shaken up. I never saw him again, and now that I'm older, I realize the danger I could have been in. Who knows what could have happened to me if I actually went to his house. So, creepy guy with the camera. Let's not meet. Update on angry mom response. So a lot of you have been asking what my mom actually did or said, and I did eventually ask her what happened. She went off. It was a very heated discussion along the lines of, if you ever come near my daughter again, it won't be the police you have to deal with. It will be me and her father, and trust me, it won't be pretty. There were also some other few choice words exchanged, and all I could do was cower and apologize. So, go Mama Bear. I was quite surprised, to be honest, as she is only little and doesn't have a violent bone in her body. This happened last year at a new job. This guy Mike was in charge of my training. At first, he seemed like a nice guy. We would talk about common interests and have lunch together. Do normal things coworkers do. Then one day he started to overshare things from his personal life, like, I hate my wife, who I knew was pregnant at the time, and if I told you I did something in a place that only I can see, would you want to know where? Now keep in mind, I'd known this guy for all 3 weeks when this started happening. And the most personal thing I'd ever shared was that I'd been on Prozac in my first year of college, which I didn't think was a big deal because doctors prescribe it like candy. This is important and you'll see why. Whatever, I didn't want to piss him off because he started bad-mouthing me to the managers. Still, I did my best to change the subject when he went too far, which was becoming a daily thing. I also avoided being alone with him as much as possible. But that didn't stop Mike from deciding that I was now his best friend or sister. He started actually referring to me as his sister from another mother, and then just his sister in front of people from the office. The first couple of times he did it, I laughed it off, but then it stopped being funny because in his mind, this was now a fact. He even tried to make the relationship official on Facebook. I'd added him along with some other people from work. A big mistake. At this point, my actual biological brother was itching to have a talk with this guy, but I told him it wasn't a big deal and I would try to gently exit myself from the situation. Well, gently doing that didn't work, myself. I was having lunch with this other guy from work in the cantina one day. Background. This is a guy who finished the same course I did. Different year though, so we had lots to talk about, and I really liked having somebody around my age to talk to. Anyways, I could see Mike giving him the stink eye from across the room. He was eating alone in a very obvious, look what you're doing to me display. The same evening, the other guy messaged me on Facebook, telling me Mike's texting him over Slack about me. We use Slack at work, and some people have it on their phones for out-of-hour stuff. He shows me screenshots of the combo. Mike is basically saying stuff like, I'll protect her to my dying breath from scum like you, and if you break her heart, I'll break you. This is some of the most cringe and disturbing stuff I've ever read from an actual person I know, IRL. Other guy rightfully asks me what the heck is going on. Did I tell Mike we were together or something? Because if I did, he apologizes if he sent me the wrong signals, but we are most definitely not together. I'm pretty upset by now. Not just because this is threatening one of the few friendships I have at work, but because it's messed up all around as well. So I message Mike asking him to stop threatening my friend, while also apologizing to the other guy over the misunderstanding. Mike texts back, I'm just looking out for you. That's what brothers do. Okay. Deep breath. This is happening. I message him telling him that he's a very good friend. Emphasis on friend. But I don't need to be looked out for. Really, I don't. He comes back with, then I'll just protect you from the shadows. And a winky face. He says some other cringe stuff about me being young and naive, which makes me a target. What? But by this point, I am 300% done with whatever he thinks this is, so I block him. The next morning, Mike comes in late, sits his ass down, and immediately texts me on Slack. Are you okay? Which I ignore. A bit later, he gets up to go for a smoke break, and as he goes past my desk, he says, Hey, I slacked you. Did you see? Yes, I saw, but I'm not doing this anymore. I pull off some generic, sorry I'm busy line and mind my own business. Lunch comes and goes. The day goes on without a word from him until about 10 minutes before it's time to go home, when I get a wall of text on my Slack that basically makes me realize that what's happening in Mike's head has absolutely nothing to do with real life. 0. He thinks I'm lashing out because I'm hurt and angry because of my trauma. He says that he'll stand by his dear friend because he made a promise to be my brother and defender. He actually wants me to take out my pain and anger on him because he can take it. I'm sitting there reading this and all I can think is, what is going on? Mike logs off for the day as I'm still processing all of this. I go down to the parking lot some 20 minutes later and there he is, smoking next to his car. I ignore him as I walk past. Thankfully, there are other people around and he just stands there, unmoving and staring at me as I get into my car and drive away. This is where I started to think about talking to a manager. We have 2 managers, a younger guy and a woman. Let's call them Pete and Pam. I started writing this long email to both of them and also thought of talking to the other guy to back me up. Remember, Mike had harassed him over having lunch with me. In the end, I decided not to. Mike had a kid on the way and he was clearly in need of mental help, which he probably wasn't getting. I wasn't about to get him fired and take away his livelihood. Spoiler alert, I lived to regret it. Things were, dare I say it, normal, or so I thought for a while. Sure, I caught Mike staring at me a few times, but I pretended not to notice. Then after a few weeks of nothing, one of the other girls on our team says she has something to tell me. Let's call her Nice Girl because she ended up helping me a couple of times after that. So, Nice Girl and I go out for coffee at lunch. There's a coffee place across the street that pretty much everybody in the building goes to. She tells me Mike has been talking to other coworkers about me and my hurt, how I'm struggling, and it's been so bad it's even making me push family away. Because we're practically family if Psycho says so, right? How he's been trying to help me and it breaks his heart that I won't let him because he cares for me so very much. How many people has he been talking to? Nice Girl knows about at least one other person. This makes me livid. You can't just go around telling people somebody else is mentally ill just to make yourself look like a saint. I mean, who does that? Now, it's definitely time to talk to the managers. I slack Pete, the younger manager, asking for a quick one-to-one, and he immediately agrees and says, "Great, actually, I've been meaning to talk to you. Pam will be joining too. I just need her to get down here." Pam's on a different floor. Crap. Oh well, I guess this is really happening. So we meet later the same day, and Pete starts asking me how I'm getting on, if I get along with the rest of the team, and so on. I have a feeling I know where this is going. Sure as rain, he says. Mike's been saying a lot of things about you, but his face isn't the face of a man who has heard good things. All the while Pam is sitting there not really saying anything, just nodding and smiling in a way that makes me a bit uncomfortable. I'm starting to get super anxious because I'm a non-confrontational person usually and I hate drama, but Mike crossed all of the lines. Still trying to be nice, I say, "Look, I think I gave Mike the wrong impression and I give them a whitewashed version of what's been going on." At this point, Pam asks me, "Did you ask him to stop?" Well, not really, but I assume blocking him on Facebook and not engaging him on Slack or offline sends the same message. Pam then proceeds to give me some BS advice, like if he starts to talk about inappropriate things, tell him you're not comfortable with it, and don't engage with him in personal circumstances or outside of work. What does that first thing even mean? They also promise they'll assign someone else as my trainer or mentor, and they'll talk to him over spreading inappropriate rumors, which I insist again are not true. Another week goes by, Nice Girl, I and another guy friend who's friends with her are all heading out to get coffee. As soon as we walk in the door of the place, there's Mike with 2 cups of coffee, and one of them has my name on it. Thinking back, he must have heard that me and Nice Girl were going out and ran ahead while we were waiting for the third guy. He tries to give that one to me and says something about it being just the way I like it, but my heart is racing so fast I can't make out what it is, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a heart attack there and then. It was probably a panic attack. By the time I get a grip, Mike's gone and Nice Girl is looking very concerned, asking if I'm alright, saying I look like death. We ended up outside while Nice Girl's friend is waiting in line, and I'm shaking and trying not to cry. She asks what's going on, so I tell her some of the things Mike's been doing. By the end of it, she looks disturbed and says, "I should talk to the managers." "Well, I already did," she says. "Tell them about today." Part of my brain stupidly thinks, but he just wanted to buy me coffee. But I can't really pretend I'm okay with this anymore. As soon as we're back in the office, I go straight to Pam. Normally, I would talk to Pete since he's our direct manager and Pam's kind of a supervising manager, but I feel more comfortable talking to a woman about this. This time I tell Pam everything, including how Mike threatened someone else over having lunch with me and how he stares at me a lot, and he sent me a long and creepy text on Slack that proves he's delusional. She asks to see the text. I say I'll forward it. I don't have Slack on my phone. She asks me to forward everything else I have. Not that she doesn't believe me, but she wants to fully understand the extent of the problem. She says it with the same knowing and understanding smile from the last meeting. She also asked me, "Has he been following you outside of work?" Now, she already knows about the coffee incident, and I also tell her about the staring in the parking lot. There's another pause. Then she says, "Well, obviously we can't fire him." And my heart sinks, but apparently this isn't serious enough for them to boot him, though they can discipline him for using the company Slack inappropriately. She asked if I'd like to transfer to another team, but I'd still have to work in the same building as the psycho. Finally, she suggested a mediation. A meeting including her, somebody from HR, Mike, and me. She doesn't sound very convinced it'll do anything, and neither am I, to be honest, and I'm just panicking just thinking about talking to him again. Did I agree to mediation? Of course I did. Did it help? Of course it didn't. Let me just start by saying I was super anxious throughout. I was literally shaking. I did my best to state in neutral terms that I want to have a professional relationship with Mike, and only that I'm not comfortable with him oversharing personal information or talking to other people about my problems, which aren't even real. Throughout this whole damn thing, he was sitting there saying, yeah, okay, with this shit-eating grin on his face, like we were just playing pretend. The only time he had any other reaction was when I indirectly said he'd been making stuff up about me. He said something like, well, you kind of told me that, remember? As if that would make any of this okay. The same day I got a Slack message from him saying, if you wanted me to give you some space, you should have just asked. No need to go to HR about it. He wasn't sitting at his desk, but he was probably still in the building somewhere. Otherwise, I'm pretty confident I would have lost my stuff then and there. I sent back something along the lines of, well, I'm saying it now, please don't ever talk to me again. To which he replies, but we work together, silly. And a winky face. This is already pretty long, so I won't detail everything else that happened. Not long after this HR mediation thing, my brother was picking me up from work one day, because my car was in the shop. For a bit of background, my brother is a pretty big guy, but he's a non-violent person, even if he looks intimidating. I'm getting in the car and Mike is there too, smoking in his car and giving us the meanest, stinkiest look you can imagine from a person. I'm pretty sure he was waiting there for me to come out of the building. It wouldn't have been the first time. This isn't just staring anymore, it's I'll kill you in your sleep staring. My brother notices and asks me if this is the guy. Yeah, but just drive, I say. But before I can stop him, he's already walking over. Mike starts getting verbally aggressive as soon as he sees my brother coming. I can hear him shouting from where I'm sitting in the car. He's getting nasty, saying stuff like, stop right there, I'm gonna run you over, and I have a gun. I have a gun. By the way, Mike is a pasty white dude and about as far from gangster as apples are from broomsticks. This is when I lose it. I walk over and just start screaming at him. I've never in my life let loose at somebody like this before or since. I honestly scared myself that time. At some point, Mike just drives off while I'm in the middle of it. I was hysterical for the rest of the evening, and I called in sick the next day because I couldn't stand the thought of being anywhere near this person again. While I was out sick, I received a text from an unsaved number saying, bitch. Just that. My brother was already telling me that I should quit the job and get a restraining order against this freak because it was obvious people in the workplace weren't going to protect me. No job in the world was worth dealing with something like this, right? I could stay with him and his girlfriend for a while if I were worried about money. My mind still wasn't made up, but the same evening I received a disturbing picture message of him. I couldn't see a face in the picture, but it was painfully obvious that it was Mike messing with me. I blocked the number and quit the job the next day. I also stayed with my brother and his girlfriend for a while, but Mike never tried to get in touch again. Or if he did, I never knew it because I blocked him across everything. That is until last week. You know how LinkedIn has this people who look to your profile thing, and sometimes it shows you their photo even if you don't have the paid subscription. Well, last week I saw that Mike stalker had looked at my phone. He's still with that company. Needless to say, I'm freaking the heck out, especially because I'm sure LinkedIn showed him I looked at his profile too. I started writing this as a way to keep track of everything that happened between me and Mike, because if he does or says anything, if he happens to just walk by my current workplace, or if he messages me, I'm going straight to the police. But since I've been a long time lurker on the sub, I thought I'd post here too. Edit. I'm honestly blown away by your advice and support. Thank you. I wasn't sure about posting this, but reading your replies reassured me that I'm not the crazy person in this. I know full well I messed up too. I was very naive when it happened, and I assumed good intentions when that obviously wasn't the case. That's something I can't take back, but if anything, this made me a lot more aware that trust should be earned and not given, and at the first sign of crazy, it's time to get the heck out of Dodge. I'm putting all the evidence I have together, and I also contacted one friend who still works there. The nice girl in my original story, in case she still has some screenshots I sent her last year. I don't have access to my old Slack account, sadly, but there are several people who either witnessed the craziness or were directly targeted by it who can testify if need be. My brother and I are also looking into getting legal advice since he too was directly threatened by Mike. saying things like he'll shoot him or run him over. So we'll see how that goes. Though I'm not sure what can be done so long after the fact. There hasn't been any contact from Mike so far, and I blocked him on LinkedIn too just in case. Also no, I don't know why Pam thought this wasn't serious enough to fire Mike or at least seriously discipline him for stalking and harassment once she became aware of the full story. I'm sure she could actually see how much this was affecting me. I've never had a panic attack in my life until Mike happened. At the time, I thought they didn't want to go through the trouble of firing a mentally ill person because they might have opened themselves up to discrimination lawsuit or whatever, but I think somebody else who replied has the right of it. It would cost them far more money to justify firing an experienced employee and hiring/retraining a replacement. Thank you again for the replies. Even the ones doubting me, if anything else happens, I'll be sure to post another update. This is an encounter my mom had shortly after I was born. It takes place in the mid-1980s in central London. It's early summer, and being in London, this means hot and muggy. Some background. I am my mother's firstborn, though not first pregnancy. The women in my family have health issues, which means we are prone to miscarriages, and pregnancy is basically really hard. Right before falling pregnant with me, my mother had experienced her first miscarriage, and, well, she was not in the best state of mind. She was incredibly upset and fearful that something would go wrong with me. This was not helped by the fact that she didn't have a bump until she was 8 months gone, and rather than gain weight, she had lost it due to extreme morning sickness and had dropped from a UK size 8 to 10 to a UK 4 to 6. During my birth, she had required resuscitation after almost dying from complications, and I had been born with some health issues. So all in all, she was not a healthy pup and neither was I, but at least I slept a lot, so she got rest at least. Anyways, at this point, I'm about 6 weeks old. My mom is still really ill and run down, but she needs to sort out a passport for me so she can show me off to family in Spain before we move abroad to Israel. My dad is Israeli and had been offered a job back home. However, at the time and being the age I was, the only option was to put me on either my dad's or my mother's passport until I was older. Since my dad was working all the time, this meant going to the Spanish embassy. My mother is Spanish and getting my name added to my mother's passport. It's a so hot and muggy day in London. The Spanish embassy is incredibly slow at doing anything and spends ages messing my mother around before finally telling her she needs to come back the following week to complete the passport process. My mother isn't happy as she is ill and fed up. Plus, she has me in a papoose across her chest, which only adds to the heat. She goes down the steps to the tube platform so she can catch the tube home, but there are delays so she has to wait. Around her are a mix of people, but mostly men in business suits. She doesn't notice the tall, heavily built guy staring at her until he's by her side. He starts trying it on with her, telling her how he could show her a good time if she were up for it. My mother glares, points to me in the papoose, and sternly tells him that she is a married mother and in no way is she interested in him or anyone else for a good time. The guy starts getting more aggressive with his approach, keeps telling her how he's going to give her a time that she'll never forget, and starts trying to touch her. My mom pushes him away and tells him to back off. At this point, the other commuters are starting to notice something is up but don't do anything. The guy then makes a grab for my mom and tries to pick her up and pulls her towards the tube steps. He makes a go to reach for me in the papoose so as to throw me off, and my mom at this point flips. Now, the way my mom describes it, she says it was like a red haze. All she knew was that I was in danger and she was too ill and fed up to be pushed around by some weird asshole. She yanked herself away from his grip and proceeded to start punching, scratching and kicking the guy with all of her strength. She didn't care one bit that she was barely chest height to him and she just wanted him away from her. The guy was screaming at her that she was crazy and he would kill her, but she kept on attacking him. The other commuters, after watching in shock for a few seconds, suddenly realized that they need to do something and step in to help my mom. The police are called and the guy now flat on the ground is arrested. My mom is shaking and she's still angry and wants to keep beating on the guy, but some of the commuters are holding her back, trying to calm her down. One of the commuters comes up to her and tells her that was the bravest and most stupid thing he's ever seen a woman do. She asks why, and he points out to the guy as he's been taken away that he had a knife and had been trying to use it to stab her and me as she was attacking him. At this point, the reality of the situation sunk in. This guy had wanted to essentially rape and kill her. And when she attacked, it was a very real possibility that we could have died. She bursted into tears and we were assisted home by the other commuters. In my late teens and early 20s, I was friends with a girl named Lucy. She was a very lonely kind of girl whose parents were, well, honestly, really shitty parents. Her mother was verbally abusive, and her father really couldn't care less about anything. Because of the lack of love in her life, Lucy searched through dating sites for love and comfort from strange men, and she was not afraid of meeting them face to face, even if they'd been chatting for only a few days. My friendship with Lucy was a strange one. I found her quite annoying sometimes, but I also felt awful for her because of her loneliness and lack of friends and love in her life. Sometimes I really didn't want to hang out with her, and some days I would accept her offer to hang out. When it was just her and I together, she was normal and okay to be around, but also very appreciative of having someone giving her attention. We had a small group of friends, and she would try to get all of us together as often as possible, and honestly, the whole group together was really quite fun. When we were all together, Lucy was very hyper, and you could just tell that she was happy to be around people who didn't insult her as her mother does. Suddenly, Lucy tells us that she has a boyfriend. We were all surprised because we knew she met a lot of guys online, but we never heard her say that she was dating somebody. A few days later, she sets up a day for our friend group to meet Trevor. None of us were looking forward to it because we thought he was going to be like all the others, a temporary boy toy. When we met him, we all felt awkward. He barely spoke a word, and he wouldn't look directly at any of us at all. Lucy would try to be funny, but he would just give her dirty looks. Needless to say, we thought he was a weird one and could tell he didn't care much for her. As the days went on, Lucy kept telling me how much Trevor did not like me. This was weird because nobody ever really disliked me. I'm always very polite and respectful, and I smile a lot at everyone. But for some reason, he didn't like me. She kept saying he thinks I am using Lucy for her money. Not sure how he thought that since I paid for everything for Lucy. To keep this piece of the story short, I think he was trying to find reasons to convince her to get rid of me. I got a terrible vibe from Trevor. He dressed like he didn't care about life, never smiled, and didn't shake our hands when first meeting us. He stank of weed, and he really had an overall uncomfortable feeling about him. After months of Trevor trying to convince Lucy that I am a terrible friend, and she would not hang out with me anymore, she started to do as he said. She would start to hide me from him. If she and I were together and he would call her on the phone, she would lie and say I wasn't there. If she were with a group of friends, he would have her swear I wasn't there. When he was going to be joining the group on an outing or just hanging out at her place, she would tell me I couldn't come. Lucy will do whatever her boyfriend says just to keep pleasing him so she doesn't lose him. Now here's where it gets scary. Lucy calls me one day and says she wants me to come hang out at her place. I agree. She came to pick me up, and we went to her house and watched TV for a bit. We then decided, since it's a nice day outside, we would take her two dogs for a walk to a nearby pocket park and would later return to the house to have lunch together. While at this park, she receives a phone call. Now, let me say that Lucy is not a private person whatsoever and has never ever walked away to answer a phone call until this day. She walked far enough away that she knew I would not be able to hear anything she said. This was suspicious to me, but not enough to question it. The call ends and she begins walking toward me with a look on her face as if she were trying not to smile. She tells me, "So I need to bring you home now." I was slightly confused as we had only been together for about an hour, when we usually spend the entire day together, and she would never want me to go home. She would even frequently beg me to sleep over to avoid being alone. So anyways, I said okay, and we walked to drop off her dogs at home, and we got into her car and off we went. About 10 minutes into the car ride, I realized she wasn't going in the direction of my house, so I questioned it. "Where are we going?" She smiled but didn't respond. I asked again, laughing uncomfortably. "Seriously, where are we going?" She continued to smile but didn't want to answer me. I started to realize she was heading in the direction of where her boyfriend lived. No way. I asked one last time with anger in my voice. "Where are you taking me?" Her only response was bone-chilling to me. "Trevor wants to talk to you." Nope, no way. I wasn't having any of this. I insisted and demanded she let me out of the car, but with her evil smile and the same response, she said it again. "It's alright, he just wants to talk with you." I was furious at this point because this creepy guy who looks like he wants to kill somebody, who also despised me, wanted to talk to me. Why can't he talk to me on the phone? Why do I need to go to his sketchy apartment? She absolutely refused to let me out of the car too. She had the doors locked, as if I weren't able to unlock the passenger door. I waited until she reached a red light, grabbed her wallet from the back seat, and took out her bus pass and bolted out of the car. I had no idea where I was or where the nearest bus stop was, but I was not about to let her crazy-ass boyfriend do whatever he wanted to me. She yelled for me to get back into the car, but of course I ignored her. She sped off furiously. I immediately blocked her number on my phone, removed her as my friend on social media, and I immediately warned the group of friends not to talk to her because she has gone nuts. I have not spoken to her since that very day, and she also lost the other 5 friends of the group as well. After this situation, Lucy, I hope you're truly lonely now.